Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and we will discuss on how to be more sustainable. We have our world famous speaker, CEO of Reduction Tech, Professor Dr. Viva. So hopefully this session will be very interesting. World Talent Economy Forum collaborate with Reduction Tech, and we are helping to grow this corporation because this is very valuable corporation for emerging economy. You know, right now we have a heat wave, lot of people dying in Asia. Uh, we have a lot of challenges around Asia Pacific for climate change. So his company has ability to solve this problem, and already different countries, Prime Minister Office, climate change departments, Ministry of Energies, Ministry of Educations, different university, largest corporation, we are communicating to grow these companies. We need more of the support for reduction tech because this is very important technology for emerging economy, and definitely it can solve climate change issues. So, Madam Viva, how we can be more sustainable?
We definitely need to be more sustainable now. Our success is actually in a very precarious position right now with the record oceanic temperatures combined with hydroxyl depletion and inundation, as well as the onset of El Nino. So I unfortunately, in my analysis, I see the next several years is extremely difficult. There's going to be a major uptick in disasters, heat waves, unfortunately, and we haven't been able to scale to match that yet. I want to inform people that if they want to send us money, we are crowdfunding at reductiontech.com or over on Shopify Miracle Hydroxyl Dispersal. So any funds that we get, we will use towards getting certified with the Canadian Standards Association and then scale up. As soon as we have that certification, we can talk to our own governments at 3 levels and get going. Now, we all know that this is because of our carbon footprint. So that sustainability issue is something I'd like to address at this point. I think people need to really go back to their carbon footprint calculator. There's a good one at climatecarbon.com, and evaluate what you can do to cut your carbon footprint even further. And I would suggest that vehicle fuel, especially flight, I would like to actually publicly call for a restriction on flying. I think it's time for people to address that. I know it's a very unpalatable idea, but I think we actually have to start doing that. And I think the next several years are going to prove me right that we're a little late to the mark with that. So to increase sustainability beyond that, another thing that we Western people can do is we can take low carbon or zero carbon days every week. I would recommend trying to do 3 days of zero carbon activity where you're not driving and you're very low carbon. I think it's time for us to actually, for the benefit of all the people that are starving, dying from heat waves and drought, that we should be making some personal sacrifices. And that would be another one that I would like to add to the mix. I think things are going to get much more serious here, and everybody's going to be much more alarmed than they are now. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I know that the hydroxyl radical, which is a very important cleanser in the atmosphere, is now severely inundated. And I am going to now come out with a hydroxyl footprint calculator so people can see how they can calculate their own hydroxyl footprint, because everybody is using the hydroxyl. When you spray your painting with a matte finish to shine up your artwork, or if you spray paint, anything where you're utilizing misting, air fresheners, all of those tax the hydroxyl radicals. So a lot of our perks and benefits need to be evaluated that way. Another example is I have a Facebook friend. I have a Facebook friend who has a sailboat. Now, the sailboat only has a small motor on it, but people forget that all the resin that went into that boat was emitted to the atmosphere and the hydroxyl took care of it. So anytime you're building with resins and that sort of thing, you are taxing the hydroxyl layer of the atmosphere. So I'm going to start an educational campaign at the end of my 9-week live stream series. I have 2 weeks going, and at the very last Sunday live stream, which is 2 weeks from now, at 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, I'm going to introduce the hydroxyl footprint. I know that's a lot for people to get a hold of, but we need to understand that, you know, this company can release the hydroxyl, which will remove carbon dioxide, methane, and all the other greenhouse gases simultaneously. And while it's doing that, it will also start to work on all the other chemicals that we have placed into the atmosphere that are legacy pollution. So it's becoming a sustainability issue, the levels of the hydroxyl radical, and we all need to really be aware of that. So that's my opening remark for now, Sharif.
Thank you. Madam Viva, when we are doing research in emerging economy, we find that they cut a lot of their trees. Example, Bangladesh have 11% of their trees right now. Same thing happening in India, same thing happening in Malaysia. It's heavily happened. So how your innovation can solve this problem when we do this right now? That's why heat wave happening and many people died in Asia.
What we need to do is actually, we've introduced how we can manage some regular climate events like the El Nino, La Nina, the Indian Pacific Oscillation. There are 4 or 5 regular climate events, the monsoon as well. And we can actually distribute only a few tons of our advanced radicals, which include the hydroxyl radical, but also include positive and negative ions that can go up and prepare these areas where these climate events come out of. They are in sort of regular formation areas. So we could actually start pre-treating the air. We can pre-treat it, treat it during and afterward as well too. So we can do a lot of weather influencing around regular climate events with ions that have no residue, that just go right into the natural system. They don't cause any further issues because they've combined with pollutants. It's all remedial. So for a heat wave, a lot of times what's happening is those heat waves are trapped under greenhouse gases, but they're also fortified by a high pressure system above them that's pushing the hot air down. We can't really do anything about the high pressure air movement because it's kinetic motion, but we can treat the greenhouse gases and start initiating a removal of the blanket so that the heat can leave. And, you know, we can do this in areas where there are regular heat waves where we know where they're sponsored out of, because they are sponsored either out of the jet stream or the jet stream breakdown with the Rossby waves, or they're related to the opposite cycle of the monsoon or another climate oscillation. So it is quite predictable, and we can see a pattern regularly happening even with the jets. So we could actually do quite a lot of analysis and be quite useful with our ions, our advanced oxidation. Sharif, can you hear me?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
we
Professor
can
David
help lower everything.
is
Yeah.
Well, Sharif, I agree with what she has said and the various elements on that. Let me just take a couple minutes and step back and touch a couple of, I think, points that are there. Because your topic today is important, particularly on how to be more sustainable. And it impacts so much of our society, from the way we produce energy, from the way we plant and grow food, how we deal with our natural resources, even how we affect ourselves every day. I've been almost, Sharif, a walking experiment and part of this the last several months. Um, uh, my fiance and I, for example, we hate wasting stuff. So we've actually adapted the model that most of the times when we go out to dinner, we end up sharing an entree, and oftentimes sharing the salad and entree and everything too, as a way to cut back the consumption, make it more sustainable. And Sharif, you would laugh at me with this one, but it has a side benefit. Since we've started doing that months and months ago, I've lost almost 30 pounds of weight. So it's making me more sustainable as well too, and increasing my health. But we look at things like this, and there's places we need to do things as nations. There's places where we need to do things as countries, and places where we need to do things as everyday citizens. Um, this is one where Dr. Talif, when he's on this, one of my biggest takeaways I've learned from him is that he continually reminds us, if the everyday citizens don't see it's important, if the everyday citizens don't see the impact for them, it's hard to make change. It's hard to make green changes. It's hard to make sustainability changes. And so an educational outreach to the citizens has to be part of being more sustainable, and how you can make that work and be used. Uh, there's so many uh, websites and things which will give you, 22 tips to do this, 43 ways to be more sustainable, a dozen ways to be more sustainable in your lives. And how can we be more sustainable at home? How can we be more sustainable at work? How can we be more sustainable with food, with clothes, and all of those areas? And we could put together, between the people you have on your list today, probably 1,000 ways to become more sustainable. But what I see is happening is that we are really beginning to see this approach go across the impact of where we are and how it can be used. Because sustainability is a really valuable tool in today's world, particularly as we look at how to adapt globally. But we have to have a global local strategy for this, as we've talked about before, because of a lot of the things we do are detrimental to the environment. They're detrimental to the uh, different forms of life in that environment, and to actually survivability. And sustainability, like I said at the start, has so many different meanings. It could be like ecosystem protection. It could be renewable resources. It could be how we farm. It can be how we behave in an environmental conscious manner, how we build our homes and factories and roads. But uh, there's ways that we have to go back, because we see back to an old United Nations report that it's hard to meet the needs for development without compromising the ability for future generation to meet their own needs through sustainability. in their environmental consideration. So you really have to look at sustainability and sustainability development under uh, three different buckets, three different pillars: environmental protection, economic development, and social development. And it's kind of beginning to go there because, you know, we see places where it's so important that by the year 2100, it's estimated the global population will likely reach 11 billion people. And the resources are increasingly being depleted. The temperatures are continuing to rise, even though we're seeing some moderation. And how can we put those into practice? How can we look at the elements of it? You know, the last COP began to take and apply money into the developing nations to begin to work with this strategy and work at moving forward. But we have to take, as we've talked about on your program before, Sharif, a circular approach to this and look at how we can use a circular economy as a uh, as a falcon point to be able to actually become more sustainable, to be able to be more environmental friendly, to be able to look at our resources in a totally different way. And it does take all elements of the ecosystem to do it. It will take almost every country in the world to be able to meet all these targets and move that way. We are thankfully beginning to, with what Viva as and others are doing, is looking at technology to have a big impact there. We're seeing some wonderful science in some of the research universities and some of the government labs beginning to address this as well. But it is that complex system of a complex system of systems problem, Sharif. And we need to address it in that way because it is that system of systems. And it's one where if I change it, I might have a local impact, it won't have a global impact. We all need to look at how to deal with this on a global level. So, Sharif, thank you for letting me throw these
Thank
comments.
you. Thank you. Mr. Markley, can you hear me? Mr. Mark?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. It's an interesting
Yes.
conversation about sustainability and all in that space. I know I need to do a better job with that whole notion, but I do try to, on a regular basis, get some of the recycling done. And I do know that, unfortunately, a lot of our corporations and even our nonprofits don't necessarily do a great job of that. And we need to do a better job in that space and all along those lines. And I'm sure that David and Viva would agree with me as well, but we've got to do a better job in the various aspects. We oftentimes don't even think about the recycling aspects with our clothes and some of our fashion and all in that space, even though I do know some folks that regularly shop, and I have even done some shopping at the thrift stores, because while it might be secondhand, it can also help in that sustainability journey as well. So I do know a number of folks that try to do a job of checking into those sources to make sure that they are doing something to encourage that part of our environment and all in those lines. And the last thing I would say is that we oftentimes don't even think about the natural plants that are out there as well, because I think I first heard about sustainability when I was a youngster, and my dad had a organization called And a Mule, and it was literally named for 40 acres and a mule, but it was a farm cooperative that he was founding at the same time that the radio station that they founded was going on as well. And it was about definitely getting some gardens, and we do know that urban gardens are a very big thing, but this was in rural North Carolina, so they got some gardens and definitely had some fruit and other things that were planted, mostly vegetables and all in that space. And there was even some goats and other things that were there for the meat production and all in that space. Now, I will say, and Dave may start giving me a little bit of a teasing remark, and Viva may as well, and I'm sure Jeffrey may even think about this also. But I know at one point we had some rabbits that were there as well, and at some point the rabbits became part of the dinners that were served and everything. But rabbits are kind of cute and cuddly, so I wasn't really feeling it when the rabbits were part of our meal planned as well, just because of the fact that they are cute and cuddly animals and all in that space. So that is something that you sometimes have to think about, is the emotional impact of the sustainability as well. But that is just what I remember as my parents did that gardening. They were also getting even some of the furniture, because my dad used to go around at a much younger age. He's in his 80s now, and he would find items out and about. I remember one time he found some things at the local dump that he made into a wonderful coffee table. So he found like some wood and some other things that he made into a coffee table, because sometimes we can find things even out and about that can help make very sustainable furniture and all in that space. So that's just some of the examples of sustainability that I remember from growing up, and that I try to carry on into my life even today as well. So that's something that I think that enough of us don't pay attention to. And the last thing that I will say is there are a number of plants that are out there that can be part of our sustainability journey that we don't remember are actually edible and all in that space. Because I know some folks that will actually even go out and find the cute dandelions, but dandelions can also be part of the diet, and maybe even help David to get on that diet program. And I remember that there was a certain plant that is grown in North Carolina called the poke salad, and that can also be like a spinach-like flavor that you can find out and about, kind of like crabgrass and some of the other things. But it is also edible, so there are things out there that are edible that can be part of our sustainability journey as well. So that's just some of my immediate thoughts to the topic.
Mark, I do have to tell you, I have rabbits in my front yard right now when I walk out in the morning, and no, I haven't thought about putting them on the table yet. But who knows where the world's going? But I love your stories because they are so good for for Sharif's average listeners here, and things that you
Yeah, I
can do.
found a baby rabbit nest growing in my brother's yard like last weekend, and it was crazy because I didn't want their dog to like eat them. But yeah, on sustainability, there's a lot I have to say on sustainability. First off, um the number one thing I think in sustainability we have to keep in mind is the level of consumption that we do, whether that's like electricity, solar, or like just we have to be mindful of that because it goes yeah, and like the way we consume, like watching TV, and the way we consume our food, um like yeah, and the way we yeah, because that's all part of the sustainability. Sorry, and yeah, like fashion, like you were saying, and the way that the industry moves and is influenced by certain, um, I guess you could call it ignorant, sort of like ignorance, these ignorant like whirlpool things that sort of drive some kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, sustainability tech and natural like bio integration for that matter is also a huge part of sustainability. I started a garden with my grandma. We grew some like cilantro and these Chinese cabbage choy, and it's just been such a awesome journey growing them. I like wake up every morning and go outside, check on my plants, and like give them water and stuff, and just meditate with them for a little while. and it's been just such an amazing journey seeing them grow, and then eating them. Like we harvested them recently, and then eating them too is like it's this like it's almost this telepathic communication like you have when you consume them in that way that you don't get from normal like grocery store food. um and then that also brings me to like sustainable tech. Like namely, I'm into cymatics, like cymatic sciences and art, which is the visibility of sound waves. Like right now all sound is invisible, but cymatics is the science of making sound visible and like doing different things with sound resonance. Like I created this shirt for a children's dance foundation in Uganda. I took the sound of the kids' voices and I created patterns in water with that vibration, and then I just made kaleidoscopes with it and stuff. So I'm doing a fundraiser for their organization, and then with the shirts, and then I can also I'm trying to do like because I make them with water. I think it would be a good. I'm trying to start some like water, um, clean water like fundraising and stuff for that. Um, which would be totally awesome, I think. And then also beyond cymatic art is like cymatic science. Um, I was thinking of if there were a way to use sound waves and find the resonant frequency in ocean seawater and like desalinate it for water purification using just like resonant frequencies of the salt and water to like separate the like atomically somehow. I mean, I don't know if it's possible, but it might be possible. But yeah, that's and then also taking the water, because like there have been some experiments done and stuff that show that water retains memory of of even just conscious like telepathic like subatomic vibrations when they froze it and look at it under a microscope. You could see the effects of different thoughts in the water. So I have an idea of using cymatics water, like take this water or any like if you play music through the water to create songs and art, like then maybe using that water to feed plants and see if they grow better, or whatever. It's just that theory I've been testing and hoping it's been working. I'm drinking the water too. So yeah.
Thank you, Madam Viva.
Yeah, Jeffrey, I just wanted to mention to you, I started a Facebook page a couple of years ago called the Blue Green Oxygen Experiment. And up there, I've got a statistic that it's a site to encourage people to grow, to do urban gardening, add more
Nice.
plants indoors, extra crops that will trap carbon in the plants. And the statistic I want to mention to you is that for every gram of basically dry biomass that you've dried for about 2 weeks air dry, for every 1 gram of that biomass, that means that you've removed 1 gram of carbon dioxide. Okay, so you can actually calculate in your own personal household by picking off all your dead plant matter and weighing it. You can count how much CO2 you've removed. I mean, it's tiny, but
Cool.
you know, we're dealing with a lot of people, and you know, if you scale that up to 5 billion people, you're talking about some pretty serious numbers. And I go into that over at Blue Green Oxygen Experiment on Facebook. So I just wanted to mention that. So that's all I have right now, Sharif. Thanks.
Yeah, like sorry. I just want to say, um, that could all be like subsidized too. Like all this data and stuff could be subsidized with like blockchain and NFTs, like for sort of verification and a way of getting that automated, so people who do like want to do it and help sustainability would just automatically get paid for it. So that's an idea there too that some of my friends are
Well,
thinking about.
maybe we should have at our recycling depots a place to weigh our biomass so that we can count how much CO2 we remove from the atmosphere. That might be an idea. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an awesome idea.
Good suggestion.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, just out of curiosity, I was just wondering because I was reading an article recently and it somewhat deals with sustainability, but there we talked about, you mentioned fashion and I mentioned fashion as well. And I did hear that there is somewhat of a push from the fashion industry because apparently there is some notion that some of the models are not exactly pleased and some of the designers because some of what is being designed is being strictly in the AI and the computer generated space and all in that. So I was wondering y'all's thoughts around that and if that might not be a threat to some of the sustainability that we are talking about. Because I saw that article earlier today and it got me to thinking both about the nature of the world and the nature of economy, but also the nature of sustainability, because there are literally efforts to have like the robots do the fashion walkway and not necessarily the humans that we have been used to and all in that space. But I just wondered if you had any thoughts, if you heard anything about that.
Yeah, AI art is like really super cool and automated and easy. Yeah, and I think it's its own thing. Well, and like fashion, and AI, doing AI stuff, I mean, why not? Um, but I think, yeah, AI also, I guess AI could definitely help us with sustainability, um, and just helping people be more mindful um, of like what they're consuming, as far as like, because with cymatics, with a little bit of water, like with like this much water, um, you can see like sound waves creating like infinite fractal patterns, like not computer generated. This is all like real light and just sound and like high dimensional shapes made out of sound. And so, like, if people would sort of be more open to, or even, just start to know about it, then, I mean, there's like, because I know people who watch TV, like a lot and just consume stuff, especially in America, they have like all these commercials that are just like really nonsense, like, and it's just constant like chattering you're hearing and whatever, and it's just like you have no control over what kind of stuff you're hearing with that way of consuming.
Definitely
And
kind
with
of a
Yeah,
bombardment of ideas and a bombardment of things that are constantly on us. I had a question for both David and Viva, because I know that there's been a lot of excitement, particularly in the United States, and I would argue even around the world, around the electric cars. I do have a friend that's got an electric car. He talks about how it is a very sustainable car, and it definitely helps him and his wife get around. They have to do the charge and all in that space. But there's another item that is very much around the world and all in that space that it seems to me would be even more efficient than an electric car. And this is just my notion and everything. But is there any movement at all? Because we do know that the earth is a majority water. So is there any movement at all to creating any sort of hydro cars? Because it seems to me we got plenty of water, so you would be able to run those cars
dude,
forever
you
and
like
a
read
day.
my mind. Yeah, I was talking about that with my dad, I think, like a few weeks ago, like making like, yeah, workable hydro cars that are, you know, yeah, exactly. Because I mean, yeah, Well, yeah, and especially because in the ocean, you can use the wind as transportation power. So, like, yeah, if there were a way to maybe create a way of, because I was thinking also about like a wave, because you know how you have the hydroelectric powers in the what do you call it, streams and stuff. But if we figured out a way to make a hydroelectric powered thing in the ocean, with the waves, I mean the waves are always going, so it's
They have that.
24/7.
They're called wave generators.
Oh,
Okay.
nice,
Yeah.
cool, yeah, yeah. So
So there
yeah, I
is movement
guess
in that area, Viva, because
Yeah.
like I said, I've not been hearing enough of that conversation around both wind and
okay,
water
yeah. So
development
maybe
powers.
a solar powered assisted like wind, um, like amplifier thing for a hydro, for a like a hydro car that's like really safe.
I
Like,
think you might need a pretty large array of solar to do it. And then that would be if you're looking at trying to get someone to do an oceanic crossing, you're looking at having to have, enough power to do that. That would probably take a fair bit. But I mean, you can see the solar panels on a lot of sailing yachts. And I think
yeah,
those mainly look after the housekeeping and the infrastructure of living on the boat, the sailing, and then there's a separate engine. So I don't think they've fully integrated it to be completely reliant on solar yet. I
yeah,
think the solar would have to be, you'd have to be able to create it and get it to stay concentrated while moving fairly quickly. So it might be quite challenging.
yeah. This is pure science fiction at this point that I'm talking.
I think,
Yeah.
Jeffrey, it's a little bit beyond science fiction right now. And Mark, the other thing is, I believe the car that will eventually become the greenest car is
Mhm.
actually the hydrogen car.
Okay.
We've got working ones. We have major people in China and Japan developing that. The problem with them is the fuel itself, the hydrogen. Hydrogen is very plentiful. It's non damaging to the environment.
No,
Most
no,
of the
no, no, it damages. It does damage.
well, there's
It
some
does
damage
cause damage.
of all the others. It's probably the least because the damage is mostly during the process of it, and its byproduct is water, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
The combustion is not an issue. It's the movement of the gas between different processes. It leaks, and that pure hydrogen is used up. The hydroxyl radical has to be relied on to remove it out of the atmosphere. And so the scientists are warning that we have to have a 9% leak or 9% slippage limit on all our hydrogen infrastructure, or we're going to run into trouble with global warming. So
oh,
they've already seen that. So I just thought I'd throw that
where I
in there.
was going is that with it though is that we cannot transport it like we transport gasoline or
Right.
natural gas. The atoms are too small. They're too energetic, and it's the
Yeah,
energy that makes a great source. But where we're seeing that going, and where the science is really fantastic right now, and we're seeing this used in some of the militaries and other things, is you've heard me, Steve, talk before about point of use generation, point of use generation for electricity, point of use generation for others with mini microgrids. Mark, where hydrogen cars are going to probably have it is there's going to be point of use generation to produce the hydrogen to go into the vehicles, as opposed to do a nationwide pipelines like we tend to do today when we're moving oil, when we're moving that gas, when we're moving natural gas and things. So it would
what's
be
a
a totally
hydrogen car?
different distribution network than what we see today.
What's a hydrogen car?
It's a car that powers the systems in it using hydrogen gas, and
It's a
Oh,
they're being
combustion. It's combustion.
yeah, and it's being
okay.
produced. There's multiple hydrogen cars, for example, being produced as demonstrations in Japan. We're seeing that with some of the big automakers in the United States. If you begin to look around, a lot of the science of that, my personal feeling is electrical vehicles are nothing more than a transitional technology. I do not see any way using my science background and using my professional
Yeah,
future
for like
to
cars,
make
I
electric
don't think it's
vehicles sustainable.
viable. Like the electric like scooters and stuff, yeah, those are awesome. But cars, like I don't think that's like very. I don't think that's gonna work out in the long run.
Well,
Yeah,
even the
either.
scooters, Jeffrey, if you look at the overall eco chain on them, even what it takes to do electric scooters, they are still energy negative at the end of
Oh,
the day. And you want to be able to, if we're going to be sustainable, have something that's on the positive side. And hydrogen seems to be the way to cross that equation.
cool.
And I'm on the board of one of the large professional societies in this area. And we were just on actually at a board meeting yesterday afternoon. And if you look at the major universities across the United States, I can talk, for example, at UT Austin, here in Austin where I live. Uh,
Nice.
they have a club for ASE there to look at these types of issues, and they can support in their labs and garages there uh, 300 students to work on that during the course of the year. They had over 3,500 applicants to be in that 300. If you go and look at MIT, if you go look at Purdue and other places like that where they're doing, the people applying to be able to work on sustainability from your age and others is just exceedingly high. But we need
Hey,
to create
Dave, what would be the issue with sustainability with electric cars? Like I said, I don't, well, I actually don't drive. I do the whole mass transit thing, but
the,
have friends
the,
that at
the,
least one or two that get by electric cars. And I know that my friend Martin, who is a photographer, really extols the virtues of the electric car because he says that it's not that hard for him to find a charging station, even here in North Carolina. And he and his wife, who is
Yeah,
a
I'm in
real
North
estate agent,
Carolina.
usually get around and
it's
usually
I'm in
not,
do
North
a great
Carolina.
Mark, it's not the ability to charge it. Number one, to build the battery is not a green process.
gotcha.
The electricity it takes to charge the battery is not a green process. The battery today are not really truly recyclable. So you throw them away. One of the dirty secrets of electric vehicles that we've seen is that now that we have electric vehicles that are reaching the lifetime of their battery, where they hold charges and stuff, those batteries just get thrown away. And what we're seeing is it costs more to put a new battery in your electric vehicle than the rest of the vehicle cost.
Hey,
So when you
Dave,
have to replace that huge battery pack underneath your vehicle, you're just going to throw your car away
no,
because
I understand what you're saying, but Dave, along those same lines, and this is a question for both everybody on the panel. There are two items that we all use regularly. I'm sitting here using mine right now. As a matter of fact, we all are, and everything that I don't know is necessarily as sustainable as it could be, because I know that we all, through our course of our years, go through probably an average of at least one. And, they have a habit of breaking, so probably two or three during the course of a year. Cell phones, and we definitely at least once every 3 or 4 years wind up changing our computers. But I'm wondering, are we doing enough about sustainability in that space, because we are all in this technology age? But I don't know that those items that are most used in technology, namely the cell phone and namely the computer, are as sustainable as they could be. But I was wondering y'all's take on that, and are there any efforts to make them more sustainable since they are a vital part?
Mark,
Yeah, I
Mark
mean
is
that's
getting
like
better.
that's part of just the mindset
Yeah.
of how we use technology and like are we gonna just sit on our phone and watch YouTube videos, TikToks like all day, or are we going to use it for like things, constructive things, and all that ties into a bigger mindset of sustainability, which ties into an even bigger mindset of like mindfulness of other living beings and their rights, and how we, I guess, all adapt to that using technology. Like, I mean, if there's global warming, then the oceans rise, then then we'll adapt to it with like boat technology, like we're talking about, and then it might even be better suited. I mean, God always comes through. Like, even if every human on Earth and every single computer AI was like, "Holy shit, we're fucked," then God could easily just create something, some new element that we never discovered that somebody would just find, and then that would, like, I don't know, create another power source or whatever. So, it's not like, you know, that anything is final, or that anything can really, go wrong if you're not asking for help with God.
Yeah, I think though that he's relying on us to come up with as many salvific breakthroughs as we can. So that's what we need to do for the electric vehicles. We need to solve the battery technology and clean it up. For silicon-based computing, if I get my way someday, I will be showing people a diamond computer chip. I know how to make diamond from carbon dioxide with my technology. And that would make the computer chips at least incineratable, which would be a step closer. You could capture all the carbon CO2 from that again and recycle it. I know how to do that as well too. So someday that may be on the horizon, and it will completely chase out a lot of these silicon chips that have all of the recycling problems, and maybe lower some of the metallic content in all of our electronics as well. So who knows?
Hey,
we'll see.
no, I
We
like
got
the
to,
idea, and I
but
love the idea, but
we have to stay alive to be able to do that, though, too, right?
we
We got to
definitely have to
watch
do that.
that.
But Viva, the question I was going to ask you is that too often it seems like when people have these innovative ideas and these great innovative ideas, it's kind of like, even historically, when people have the innovative ideas, they don't get the support that they need, because unfortunately the monopolies and the corporate greed folks are too much in control. So I was wondering, how much of that are you having to fight? Because it sounds to me like that would be a wonderful idea and also a great
Yeah.
economical idea. But I'm sure that the
Yeah, there's
corporations
a
are
lot.
very,
Like if
Yeah, tell me about
Yeah,
it. Like
if I
making this.
talk to the angel investors, if I talk to the angel investors who are in the networks, they all want me to tell them how I'm going to get out of my own company in 5 years to pay them off, because they have extremely expensive capital. And so I'm trying to work a situation where I can stay in my company and continue with the technological innovations. And yes, I have been treated for being female like a criminal, and also been treated like a criminal for being an innovator and an inventor. That is absolutely, unfortunately true. And it's just, I don't know how to address it. You just have to soldier on through and persist.
Well, and it's not just there. We're seeing that particularly in today's environmental situation everywhere. So, Dr. Sharif, my last comment, because I am going to have to jump off in a minute, is that we are seeing, though, to address what she's saying, some real great activities in this. We're seeing green bonds becoming more and more easy to access, and that's going to be one. Out of the last two COPs, money has been made available through the United Nations and other NGOs like the World Bank, USAID, IDB, and others to address sustainability and environmental. And I see that the big difference from the last two COPs is the movement towards it's not just the big nations, but it is a global. And the last COP, meaning by the United Nations, explicitly is making money available to developing nations to deal with this. Uh, she was right. There's a lot of innovation that can happen. So, Sri, one of your questions to us always is, what can my entrepreneurs do? What can my innovation do? What can my university do? What can the governments do? They all can be innovative in this area, but they have to understand this is a global issue, not a local issue. Even though local is important, it's a global issue. Change has to be sought at that level. And you're seeing it, Mark. The other thing that to answer your question before I jump off, I happen to have been the co-leader of the very first semiconductor roadmap, where these issues, even way back then, were very important parts of the roadmap. This whole sustainability, the ESH parts of it, and everything. So this is something that, for example, the semiconductor industry has been working on for 30 years. It's not an easy problem. If these were easy problems, all these issues would be solved. They're very complex system of system problems. And it's going to take a continued innovation to be able to do that to be successful. I also had the privilege of leading the energy density storage roadmap for the US military. And same thing, energy storage would be a huge boon to help us be sustainable. Huge boon, because it would let us take wind power and wave power and solar power and store it for when those things are not producing energy, which is one of the challenges now. But it has the same issues we have. It's a very complex one. It takes more energy to produce energy storage than you get from using it right now. So is it sustainable? Not yet today. Is it necessary to go forward with? Yes. Some of the more exotic materials like the diamond, like some of the new developed oxides going back, and particularly some of the air oxides have great promise, but they're not there yet. And it takes time. In this particular area of sustainability, there's a lead lag time from when you begin the research to do the work to it becomes a successful, viable commercial product. In this particular area, it's about 20 years.
Yeah, it's 20 years for sure. Yeah.
It's about 20 years.
But along those same lines, don't you feel? I know you're getting ready to get out, David. I think we're getting to wind the whole thing down very shortly, based on what I'm seeing at the clock on the wall and everything. But one of the things I was curious about is, don't you feel that in a lot of ways a lot of the local governments are doing a better job in sustainability? I know here in North Carolina, there is an area that is south of us that are doing quite well in the solar panel and the solar kind of energy, and there's another part that's doing well in the wind farms. But that is the local governments that did the initiatives to get those things going, and I don't know that they had as much support as they could have had from the state, and I know they didn't have the kind of support that they needed from the federal. So maybe in this case, local initiatives are the better way to go.
Well, you have to do things locally to affect global.
Right.
But you have to be global to solve the issue. So you can do that. I mean, one of the technologies I love that's sustainable, and there's a couple of companies that are doing this now, is they've developed unique approaches for taking, all those freight trains we have going across the country here and in Europe and every place, and turning them into using their kinetic energy to generate electricity and storing it in batteries on the train. So adding cars of batteries to a train to generate the kinetic energy into energy that can be stored and then offloaded back into the grid. We need innovation like that to say, what are the things we're having to do to live? Is there a way we can make them greener? Is there a way we can make them more sustainable? We're not going to get away from freight trains. We're not going to get away from cross-country trailers. Is there a way can I not only make them more sustainable, but can I use, for example, the kinetic energy to generate? Can I take and put energy cells on top of trucks to charge batteries to maybe extend their transportation and use it while they're driving across the country? Those are the types of innovations that Dr. Sharif needs to push his students to do, that we need to push the governments to do, and others, is we we are a society where we like to innovate,
Mhm.
and we just need to take those and begin to put them in a way. I've been fortunate to have worked in some of the leading research and development organizations in the United States, and where we have the best results and the most breakthrough and the most distinctive result. Distinctive, by the way, gets you more mileage than breakthrough results. But where we can get the most distinctive results is when we use group intelligence. And we look at not within our narrow stovepipe of our technology or our industry, but where we can look cross industry, cross science and engineering and others, and take those and synthesize them into solving problems that are not necessary for that one location, that one industry, that one technology, that can be applied broadly to solve the problems in multiple industries and multiple regions of the world and stuff. And if I could take Dr. Sharif's magic wand I saw he had when he had guests over in Bangladesh and wave it would be to do just that, to get the group intelligence put into a place, to not look at the point solutions like we tend to talk about on this program, but to look at the broader problem sets that are the grand challenges that need to be met. There's so many grand challenges in sustainability, so many grand challenges in all the things that we typically talk about here. It needs that type of global effort to have the impact to solve those grand challenges. So, Sharif, I've talked too much, but thank you for letting me be on your program.
Thank you. Mr. Markey, what's your
Thanks,
concluding
David.
remarks?
No, I think that sustainability, as I've said, and as I am learning from all of these other esteemed guests and everything, is a very important part of what we need to be doing. And we definitely need to continue to advocate that our folks on the local level do their part, but also make it part of a national, and I would argue even a worldwide agenda, and all in that space. So it's definitely something that we need to be thinking about as to ways that we can do it on a daily and regular basis in our own everyday life, but also ways that we can get it in implemented into policies as well. I would love to see that kind of innovation that the lady was talking about, where we could have these kind of sustainable computers, because too often computers are going into landfills and causing all kind of waste because they are not necessarily sustainable. And we can say the same thing for the telephones. I mean, you can go and get a refund in terms of some money by turning in the phone and maybe recycle some of the parts, but it's still not as fully sustainable as it could be, and all in that space. So I do know there's got to be effort to make things more sustainable that we use on a regular everyday basis, and that will be my concluding remark in that particular state.
Thank you. Mr. Jeffrey, what's your
Yes, Mark.
concluding remarks for today?
Yeah, my final thoughts, I've talked about this before here, is that, and especially in today's topic of sustainability, I think psychedelics um offer a great solution, because especially again with sustainability and being mindful of the things we amount of energy we're consuming, is that a person who goes maybe on YouTube, plays video games all day, watch TV, I don't know, eats junk food and stuff, they can have a psilocybin mushroom experience, and then next thing they're trying to create a garden out in the woods, just like breathing, doing yoga and stuff like that. And so that alone is worth like fills all the categories of sustainability, because they're going to be in another mindset of an awareness of the other lives and stuff that they're intertwined with, and their realities. So I think between that psychedelic and intelligent psychedelic plant like medicine, and AI assisted things for innovation and reassignment of like funding to rearrangement of how money works based on like almost like a social credit system like they have in China, I guess, already. But yeah, I guess not in like a not in like a way that is like fearful, but like in a way that is based on like beauty and stuff. Because like think about how name brands, like I'm not gonna drop any name brands, but they can charge $500 for a plain white t-shirt and people buy that. Like, come on. I'm making shirts out of like, I got the sound from like these different organizations of charity organizations of whatever music. I was reading my Bible. I created like a shirt from the vibrations of the words in the Bible. And so it's like just this whole there's so that is going to be the new way of how money is influenced in art, and sustainable lifestyle awareness, is what I'm trying to shift or create, stuff like that. So yeah, thanks, Sharif.
Thank you, Madam Viva. What's your concluding remarks for today?
Well, I'd just like to say to Jeffrey that it's really good that the artistic aesthetic of what we value is being shifted, and it definitely is in the younger generations. But you have to remember there will always be a very nerdy techie element to what we're doing, and we have to make sure that our nerds and technical people are doing things that are really going to be super useful and super sustainable. So that's what I would say to you on your concluding remark. And I just like to add that I do suggest that for people who are living in the developed nations to try and take zero carbon days or do more of them. And also to watch out for a new meme around the hydroxyl footprint, which we're going to teach about in the coming weeks on Facebook. And that's all I have. Reductiontech.com. Hopefully some people will get together and we'll get scaling our technology. Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining today's sessions. I request all of our audience, please support Reduction Tech. This is very important innovation for all of the countries around the world. We have climate related challenge. We have a lot of barriers. I'm sure through these solutions, the global community has uh, great solution from reduction text. Thank you, Madam Viva. Thank you, Professor David Smith. Thank you, Mark Lee. And thank you, Jeffrey, for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forum. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Adios. God bless. Jesus is Lord.